Hi, in the screencast we're going to show you how to merge photos onto a different background. And right now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, and what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to make your selection with our subject here. And the tool that we're going to be using is the magnetic lasso tool. Now, one thing you'll also want to remember is that it works like a magnet, meaning we'll work on contrast, but there's a frequency option up above that you'll want to set lower. I usually like 25. It tends to not travel as fast. And then what happens is that this magnetic lasso, you want to remember where you start, because for you to close up the selection, you need to click on the point as to where you started the process. Notice how when I'm going in corners that I'm also clicking my mouse, and the reason I'm doing that is because sometimes when it has to make sharp turns, it doesn't quite like to stay on the subject, as you can see right here. And what you can do is you can just hit delete, which will get rid of your last selection as well. And you notice that I zoomed in there and moved it down to the bottom part of my subject. And how I did that was I actually pressed on my space bar, and that hand came up, and it allowed me to move around my document in the zoom mode, which is really nice when you're doing selections, because it's granted, when you're doing a selection and you're zoomed in, it's much easier to see any mistakes that you make, and easier to fix right away than it is to have to go back and view it. So right now we're just going up, and you can see it does work well on the contrast. And so just again, anytime you come to corners or sharp curves, just click on the mouse, and again, holding down the space bar, the hand comes up, and then as long as you get good contrast with your subject, you can usually make a fairly decent selection. Again, if you have similar contrast in any area, you may want to actually click the mouse along in order to get it to work. And so I go back, you see the circle coming underneath, and I've completed my selection there. So now what I do is I go up to Refine Edge, and this is a wonderful option to use. You find it up in your option bar, and it gives us a number of different things we can do. What we're going to be doing is we're taking a look at the edges, and we're noticing where we might want to make some adjustments with our selections, maybe areas that we missed or we went too far. And another thing we do when we're moving a selection into another document is we want to feather the edges slightly. Now I have them feathered at 7 here. Personally, that might even be a little bit too much. I would say, depending on your subject, etc., you probably want to be around 3 to 5 on the feathering. So anyways, again, what you can do is you can go ahead and you can make any adjustments you want to your selection. And then, again, we're going to go ahead and do the same type of thing. We're going to go ahead and make a selection. Now, one thing you might want to remember is you can actually add to a selection by going up here. And you can also do this by holding the Shift key down on your keyboard while you're doing your selection. And then you have Take Away Selection. And if you want to use your keyboard key, you can hold down the option to do this. And you can also mix selection tools. So for example, if I started out with the magnetic lasso tool, I could finish up just using the regular lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool, and mix all my selections tools together. So you're not, it's not required that you only stay with one selection tool. And the Shift always adds to any of the selection tools, and the option always takes away from your selection tools as well. And again, you can use the options in the keyboard for adding to a selection, or you can use your keys on the keyboard. And this particular tool, the Magic Wand, it actually looks for color, and it has a tolerance level. So the higher the number, the more colors it will look at, and the lower the number, the more specific the colors it will look at. And so what happens is when I press down, it will just make a selection based on color and density. So what I just did now is I just dragged the tab down from my actual subject, and I'm going to be putting my image into this background here. Now the one thing we want to remember to do though, and you can see now I've got both of these showing here, and when I get back into Photoshop, you know, you'll be able to see, or I am in Photoshop, but notice how I just took the move tool and I said just move it right over here, okay? And now I can go ahead and do my adjustments and image size. The thing is you may want to do the image size first before you actually make your selections. And this way you know that when you bring your image over to the background image that they're similar in dimensions. Once you make your selection though, if you try to change the dimensions and image size, it will get rid of your selection. So you want to make sure you do this. But we're going to go to the free transform tool, which is Apple T, and we're just going to resize the image so that it fits in a more realistic perspective here on my background. And as you notice right now, the image is looking pretty pixely. You want to make sure you always hold down the Shift key and always go from the corners, otherwise you'll go out of perspective with the Edit Free Transform button. But once you finish your selection and double click it, the resolution should improve if the resolution was of high quality to begin with. You can also go into the adjustment panels, and if the lighting is off, for example in levels, if you see the black, this controls the shadows or the darks. The middle one is grays, controls the gray, and the white controls the whites. And as you see, as I'm moving them, it's changing the exposure intensity of my subject, and depending on what I feel a need to improve on will determine which one of those sliders that I select. I can also do color balance changes. So for example, if my subject had been shot in the midday sun and my picture here is definitely cloudy, the background, I may want to do some adjustments as far as the coloring in my subject so that it matches more clearly to the background as well. And you can also change the shadows, midtones, and highlights in the color balance as well.